everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Super excited you are here. CLO Coffee Club number 6. Let's see. Let me share my screen so we can get going. I think a few of you are at tables. Hopefully I'm not cutting off any awesome conversations that you're having. So today we are going to have a talk about sharing skills across generations. We've got a jam-packed event for you. We've got an hour to get through quite a bit of it. So super excited that you're here and you're curious to learn more from our amazing keynotes. So a little bit about me. My name is Catherine Cornwell, but you can call me Kat because we are fast friends. I like to say that I'm a recovering operator. I got my start in sports operations and then pivoted into retail operations. And like a lot of us, I worked for an amazing leader who saw something in me that I didn't initially see myself and suggested I moved my career into education. So I pivoted my career about 20 years ago into learning and development and have had the opportunity to work some really great employers and have worked in retail, most recently veterinary medicine, kind of a patchwork quilt of industries that I've worked in. And currently I'm a leadership and development coach and a consultant. And about 5 years ago, I found Filtered when we were sourcing for an LXP and came across Magpie, which I don't know if anybody here is familiar with Magpie, but it was a really great solution and the most fabulous, amazing people to work with, and was a raving fan ever since because of the people behind the product. And here I am today with you. So super excited to get going. Let's talk about some ground rules for today's session. It is a safe space to share. So you guys are going to be into table groups having a talk. And so this is a safe space for you to share any challenges, any roadblocks that you're experiencing in your current role or in your industry. So let's leverage the mind power of this group to help you conquer those challenges and get over those roadblocks. I like to say a little bit of Vegas rules, but I'm in the US. For you guys in the UK, maybe it's Chatham House rules. And I also like to say what's said here stays here and what's learned here leaves here. So please feel free to share any aha moments as you leave the session. We want you to engage. I see somebody found the emojis. Please type away in the chat. I would love for you guys to light up the chat right now. If you see on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see the bubble for the conversation. Go ahead and put in there where are you coming from today? Where are you sitting currently taking this session? Great. I see a few of you have already said hello to others. So engage through the chat, engage through the Q&A. We're going to be sending you some prompts there. And then respect. As you're having conversations, respect opinions, respect experience. There are a lot of you coming from different positions within your organization. So please take care of one another as you have these really great conversations at your table. And then ask us questions. Pop it into the chat. At the top, you'll see the QA bubble. As we are going through the keynotes and you have some burning questions or like, I hadn't thought about that, I'd love to learn more, go ahead and type that into the Q&A because we've got some really cool functionality in AirMeet where we can actually post your question up on the screen for everybody else to see and we're not having to read it. And then you can also post your question there in the text box. So it looks like we're probably good to go. Yeah. So today, the working agenda, I say working agenda because if we go a little bit long in any one space, we've got some flexibility and it's pretty fluid. So we're going to kick off the session with 2 amazing keynotes given by 3 incredible women. Then we're going to send you off into tables to have a workshop, to have a talk about what you learned. And then next, we're going to have a panel where you can ask your questions of our keynotes, and then we'll close out. But wait, there's more. There's a bonus Q&A. So if you want to talk about something that's maybe a bit off topic or became a tangent in your table discussion, we can stick around. We can answer those questions for you. So sound good? You guys want to give me a thumbs up? Yeah. All right. Here we go. So we've got the 2 keynotes from 3 powerhouses who just all happen to be women, which I think this is probably the first time we have had all women for CLO Coffee Club. And I kind of feel like Alexa, play Who Run the World by Beyonce. So I got to hear all of their presentations earlier this week, and wow, it's super exciting. Anyone else a data nerd like me? I love data. I love numbers. It drives me, it lights me up. These two presentations are super data rich. So hopefully you have something to take some notes, write questions down as they're going through their presentations. So with that, first up we have Lisa and Catherine. Who's familiar with Natwest? If you're not familiar with Natwest, they're a UK-focused banking group with over 65,000 workers in their network, and they're based throughout UK, Poland, India, as well as Europe. So these two lovely ladies have a combined nearly 35 years experience with Natwest. So bravo to Natwest for being able to keep and retain super top talent like these two. So Lisa is the learning strategy manager, and a key element of her role is product ownership for Workday and driving a better learning experience through innovation and technology. And then Catherine, the yin to her yang, if you will, is the strategic projects lead within people and transformation. She's currently managing the future skills program and bringing people along to adapt and be ready for the future of work. So without further ado, Lisa and Catherine. You gotta love a little lag time. Welcome, ladies.
Hi, really nice to meet you. And Kat, wow, thank you for that introduction. And I think Catherine and I need to get some matching yin and yang t-shirts next time we're together. So we stand next to each other. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the presentation. And thanks very much, Kat and Toby, for asking us to come along. If you could just pop up the next slide, Kat, that'd be great. Catherine and I are going to double act it today in true yin and yang style. What we'd like to talk to you about is kind of three main things. We're going to give you a bit of context to our skill strategy and a little bit around the prioritization of our key and critical skill areas. So it's a really huge focus for us in the organization at the moment in terms of how we meet the future skill needs of the organization, but also how we retain the critical skills that we need in the organization. I'm just going to talk you through our learning proposition content model. So I guess as appetite and demand and ways of learning change, one of the things that we need to do is to really pivot in terms of how we look at our content mix and how we engage our colleagues in how we build that content. And then, because it's a big part of my job, basically, I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about our channel strategy and just how we're using technology to support our skills agenda. So those are the three things that we're going to talk through today. And I'm just going to hand over to my yang, Catherine, and she's going to just talk about just the context around our skills strategy. So over to you, Catherine.
Thanks, Lisa, and hi to everybody. So as we know, the future of work is changing, and the skills that we need in the bank for the future and as individuals within the bank is evolving very much at pace. We know that the financial services industry does have a skills gap with data, digital and technology, the skills of the future alongside behaviours. And as you can see in the top left-hand part of this slide, there's a reference image from the Future of Jobs report, which shows the days of learning the average worker needs to gain the skills in these future skills areas takes time. So this is why we've got a real focus as the skills programme to kind of plug that gap. So our approach to skills in Natwest is really around how we plan, attract, build and retain future skills with a real focus on grow your own. And we've got three main parts to this journey, which you can see that we've referenced as our goals on the right-hand part of this slide. So firstly, we've developed a proposition for our colleagues that invests in skills for the future. And technology is a really key part of this journey to understand what skills we have now in the bank and also use machine learning to help colleagues to develop themselves for the future. Lisa's already referenced a little bit of this, but we'll cover it in a little bit more detail. But we are using our HR platform, which is Workday, to support our colleagues to develop their skills through short-term gig opportunities, give them learning recommendations and on-the-job learning based on the skills that they not only have now, but the skills, interests that they have and want to develop in the future. Secondly, we're supporting our colleagues with opportunities to reskill through formal reskill programs, which really do allow us to retain experience and retrain colleagues for future roles. We had our first pilot take place at the end of last year, with 20 colleagues in the UK reskilled as software engineers, and all 20 of those weren't from technology backgrounds. They were at risk of redundancy and would be in a situation where they would have exited the bank. But we successfully reskilled all 20 of those, with 85% securing permanent roles and doing the software engineering jobs now. And this was really, the first part, or the first pilot, I should say, of our reskill opportunity. The programme that we delivered for those people was a real blend of formal development and experience-led opportunities, which has really given a blueprint for how we're going to do this going forward. And we've got a number of other reskill programmes underway this year, which are going to be focused on data engineering, software engineering and human capital design, which are all key hotspots for us, both now and also in the future. And then our third goal is around developing future-focused technical skills available bank-wide. So what is it that all of our colleagues need to upskill and reskill and remain relevant and employable within banking and within Natwest? And to support this, we've recently, at the start of this year, actually only over the last couple of months, launched our skills commitment to all colleagues, and we've called it Learning for the Future, and you can see the kind of imagery in purple on the bottom right of the slide. This has given all colleagues in the bank, regardless of demographic, of role, of tenure, the opportunity to take up to 2 Learning for the Future days each year to focus purely on future skills. So again, not about the jobs that people are doing now or the skills that they need now for the job, but really thinking about the future. The content for Learning for the Future is predominantly accessed through our Natwest Group Academy. And it's a real mix of different types of learning, both team and individual learning, to enable everyone in the bank, agnostic of demographic, to have the same base level of skills in our future skills, so that they, as I said before, remain relevant and employable. And we're really investing in our colleagues through this commitment, and it's had great feedback so far over the last few weeks since we've launched it out to the masses. Our future skills that we're focused on, you can see on the bottom left-hand part of this slide, and they've been developed with the work that we have led with the Financial Services Skills Commission. And from that, we've identified what are the top 10 skills that we want all our colleagues to have that base level in. And these have all been pinned back to our critical people capabilities and also our values from a bank as well, for the bank as well. So Lisa, I'll hand back to you to take us through the next bit.
Thanks, Catherine. So I guess just to take us to, Catherine's talked a little bit about our kind of campaigning and how we're engaging colleagues, but one of the things I think it's really good to talk about is how we as a learning function have had to respond to the changes in obviously the generations that are in the organisation, but also the kind of wishes, the wants, the needs, the different types of ways of what people, how and when people want to learn within the organisation. So what I'll do is I'll just talk through what we call our learning content faculty model. So what we recognise is that a one-size-fits-all approach, it will no longer work. So one of the things that we want to be able to do is to be able to create and curate content applicable to the needs of the people in our organisation. So I'll just talk you through this model that we use in our learning team. We've had this stood up for probably about 18 months now, but particularly focused around the Future Skills campaign that Catherine's just talked about that we've launched recently. So in terms of the 4 steps, we kind of, at the top of the diagram, we talk about the skills and capabilities. So we get clarity on those organizational skills and capabilities. Those can be either strategic future skills, core organizational skills that we need today, but also because we are such a large organization with a number of varied roles, we've also got a number of really key specialist skills that we need in the organization. Within the learning team, what we then established is what we're calling a faculty model. So our learning proposition managers, who own the core and the critical capability curricular areas, will work really closely partnering with key stakeholders across the organisation to agree the skill outcomes, to define what the needs are, but also to look at what the learning preferences are, to be able to really kind of a good content mix. So we'll work with strategic skills teams, so people like Catherine and her team. We'll work with subject matter experts in the business. They could be both internal and external. And we also work really widely with a number of communities of practice across the organisation as well. In terms of once we've designed and defined the skill capabilities, we then move into kind of sourcing and testing. So we'll source the content in a wide mix of formats, durations, really to build those skill outcomes. And what we've increasingly started to do with that is to really test that content before we launch it out to all colleagues. So we'll have subject matter expert reviews. We have a colleague experience squad within the organisation, which includes a number of different people from across the organisation who have got an interest in testing and being involved in new projects within the organisation, and we use them. We test it through our employee-led networks, and we also run test and learns on piloting some of our content, so that what we can be sure is before it kind of hit the streets, as it were, we've really tested it and we've made sure that it is fit for purpose. And then what we do is we deploy that content to our colleagues through an increasing range of channels. As Catherine said, we have a Natwest Group Academy, and we've got our learning management system, which is Workday Learning. We've also got a series and a number of specialist third-party enterprise learning catalogues. And I guess the one that we are using more and more at the moment is our social channels, so that we know that what we want to be able to do is to surface our learning content in the natural workspaces and places where people are spending most of their time. So it's really easy for our colleagues to find it. And that's just a cycle that goes kind of round and round in terms of how we then make sure that we've got fit for purpose skills, definitions, capabilities, and the content to support it through those channels. If you just move to the next slide, Kat, that'd be great. So just to touch on our channels, we have massively increased the number of channels that we have to deploy our learning. We have a workplace group called #LoveLearning, which is one of the largest workplace groups that we have in the organisation, with approximately 45,000 members. And we use Love Learning for a number of things. We use it as a campaign channel. We use it as a news channel. We run live events through #LoveLearning, and we also use it to publicize some of our product launches as well. One of the things that we've also recently implemented to Love Learning is what we call the Love Learning Studio. So we've developed a number of tools and techniques to allow colleagues to create their own content. So a big part of our learning strategy is how we increase peer-to-peer learning and knowledge sharing. And Love Learning Studio has been a real success, and we're seeing it's only really been launched for the last couple of months, and we've already seen in excess of 200 colleagues started to download content in order to be able to use it. We've got our Natwest Group Academy, which is our kind of essentially our kind of front door to learning, where we curate a series of content around our core and critical capabilities. We've experimented as well. We started to experiment with something through #LoveLearning as a channel. We've recently implemented over the last year what we call the Learning Breakfast Show. So this is a magazine show that runs on a quarterly basis. We have subject matter experts and speakers come in and talk to us. We have colleagues come in and share their experiences of learning, and it's in a really kind of fun format, and we've got a really, really high engagement in that as a format. And then we've got our learning management system, which is Workday Learning. So what we're doing is really experimenting with a number of different channels in order to surface learning at the right points to colleagues and just give them a really wide choice as to how they can get involved in learning content. You just go to the next one. Thanks very much. Just to touch on what we're doing in the Workday space. So we know that increasingly what colleagues want is a really personalised experience for both their learning, but also their wider career development. So we're starting to look at how we can use Workday to be able to support that. And one key element of that is in something called our career profile and the career hub. So what we're asking colleagues to do as part of our Future of Learning campaign is we're asking them to go into Workday and fill their skills in the career profile. So tell us the skills that you've got, tell us the jobs that you're interested in, and tell us the skill interests that you want to develop. What we're able for them to do through our career hub, which we're due to launch shortly, is be able to serve personalized learning, because we've been able to tag our learning content to those skills in the system. One of the other areas that's really interesting for us that just launched at the beginning of this year is our talent marketplace through gigs. So we've seen a real appetite, particularly in our younger areas of our workforce, to go on short-term assignments, both to develop their skills, but also to learn and get experience from other members and more experienced people in the organization. So we've seen a real interest in people both posting gigs, so people advertising gigs, but also people going on gigs. So that's a real kind of area of interest for us. We can serve as mentors, so through the skill interest in the skill profile. And what we can also do is to connect colleagues to other colleagues who've got similar interests. So it's new for us. We're at the early part of our journey with this, but it's really, really exciting. And what we're seeing is really, really high interest across all of our colleagues in all of these things. But for us as a learning team, what it will allow us to do is to more dynamically curate content, really personalized to what colleagues are looking for, which will free up some of the time in our proposition team to be able to focus on what those skills of the future are. If you just go to the next slide, Kat. This is just a quick look at our opportunity marketplace, which is our gigs. So you can see here that what we're able to do is to surface gigs, but also where there are gaps in there, we're able to surface learning to be able to meet the requirements of the gig. And then if you just go to the next slide, Kat, this is just our learning management system. We call it Home and Discover. And you can see here that it will surface learning based on your skill interests, but also your skills that you want to develop. So when we look at that holistically with our campaigns, our multiple channels, our faculty model, and using technology to personalize, what we see is we're really looking at how we can kind of embrace and move toward that future focused learning team. Okay, Kat, that's me. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lisa and Catherine. I love so much about your presentation. I saw the board light up around the personalized learning journey and things around gigs. I selfishly love what you're doing around the faculty piece of helping, taking a village to help you find and source the content to help determine where you're going to go with learning. So thank you so much. And I'm so curious to know what the audience got from the presentation. What do you guys workshop? So up next, we have Binda with Sutton Trust. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Sutton Trust, they are a social mobility charity that supports over 10,000 students each year with an aim to improve access to leading universities, careers, and apprenticeships for young people in low-income backgrounds across the UK. Binda has worked in the education sector for over 10 years, and she is a true collaborator, which is evident through her work as the head of innovation at Sutton Trust. A shining strength for Binda that I think is creativity. She's always looking to improve things and find solutions that work for everyone. And something that Binda shared with me a while back is one of her favorite lines from the movie Pursuit of Happiness. I don't know how many are familiar with that movie. Don't ever let someone tell you that you can't do something. You got a dream, you got to protect it. So I'll stop gushing about Binda and I will pass it over to you, my friend.
Thank you. I was going to say that was a great introduction. Thanks, Kat. Hi, everyone. I'm going to try and share my screen. So give me a second. Just get that up and loaded. Why? Oh, wait. Oh, there we go. Give me a sec. Always takes a little bit of time. Great. Can you see? I can't see anyone else. So I'm just going to go off the back that you can hear me. Yeah, great. Okay, so morning, everyone. As Kat mentioned, my name is Binda. I'm head of innovation at the Sutton Trust. We're a charity that champions social mobility through kind of hard-hitting research and policy advocacy work, and then directly through our programs where we try and impact the young people that we're working with on the ground to really improve the outcomes for them in terms of their university prospects, apprenticeships, and then going into their careers. As Kat mentioned, I've been working in this space for over 10 years, and I'm really, really lucky that I've been able to work on so many interesting projects over that time, from kind of setting up new projects to kind of working on strategic projects within the organization and elsewhere, as well as kind of leading on like large scale events for like 600 young people. So a real breadth of kind of things that I've managed to do in that time. At the moment, as the head of innovation, I am looking for new ways that we as an organization can tackle some of those existing problems that are present within our society. So why is it that kind of a young person from a lower income family is less likely to get the grades that they need to get into university or get into the world of work? What are the factors and the barriers, and how can we look at new ways that we can kind of tackle some of those issues? I guess the main challenge that we've got as an organization and as we as a society is that there are so many organizations working in this space, universities, employers, third sector, business, etc. But yet the dial isn't quite shifting, and it's not really moved very much. It got a bit better and then it got a bit worse again during COVID. And I guess what we're trying to do is think about kind of what big projects could we do, what strategic things could we do that could make that difference in the future. So that's basically what I'm on the hunt to try and find out. So those are just some of the pictures of some of the young people that have been through our programs. I'm really lucky I get to go to lots of these events and experience some of the great things that the students get to experience, hear from them, talk to them, understand what works, what's not working, and really get that one-on-one contact with them to try and help shape kind of what the next idea could be. So it's a real privilege that I have to be able to do that with them. So why do we focus on social mobility? So what we found through all of our research and research that's done in the sector more broadly is that the attainment gaps between young people from the lowest income families and those from the highest income families are only widening. And whilst there's lots of work to try and reduce that gap, there's still a lot of work that needs to happen. And attainment is one of the biggest barriers when it comes to young people getting into university or going further in their career. We know that, you know, the grades that you have are such a good foundation upon which you can develop those skills and get those experiences that you need. And actually, sadly, that gap is, 11 months before a child even starts school. So it's like showing that the problem isn't just at school level or at career level. It actually starts from the moment a child is born. And that's why a lot of our research kind of looks at some of the kind of challenges around the early years, all the way through to kind of graduate opportunities and progression and leadership. So just some of the kind of stats that we've found through our research, particularly around COVID. So 47% of our young people have taken part in no enrichment activities at all. And as a lot of you are, big corporates that employ lots of young people when they start off in their careers, you know how important that enrichment and those activities are to beefing up your career and your CVs. And then 76% of students said that they were really worried about being able to gain the right skills and experience needed for employment. And then 61% of employers actually had to cancel work experience and internships for young people during the pandemic. So COVID has been a huge disruptor, particularly in the education sector. When you think about all of the people that have been impacted by COVID, I think we can probably agree that young people have been impacted the most. As potential parents or parents of young people, you'll probably see some of the impact of that through your children's own learning as well. So what did we do? So my journey with Filtered began back in 2019 when I was on the hunt for some partners to kind of build a new platform for our students. It had to offer a home that had high quality information for them. We wanted it to be a home that allowed them to get practical tools around what they might want to do when it comes to university or careers. And then we also wanted to connect them to our 50,000 alums that are out there doing brilliant things. So we needed to provide a little home for them. And that's when I was kind of on the hunt, and it was a big new innovation piece that I started working on at the Trust. We managed to secure some very generous funding from Bloomberg Philanthropies out in the US. And they gave us a year and a half to build this platform. So we were like, great, lots of time. And then the pandemic hit and we were like, oh gosh, we only actually now have less than 4 months to build this platform, which was, you know, the only thing that young people had, because schools were closed, colleges were closed, universities were closed, work experience was getting cancelled. Their families were often left in very difficult situations. And so we knew that we were kind of providing that lifeline for them in terms of getting that experience, getting that information that they needed to be successful and continue on that journey that they wanted to kind of progress through. So we had, less than 4 months to build, and Filtered were, you know, a fantastic partner in that. We managed to build a flat platform that helped over 6,000 young people, something which we never anticipated we would be able to do in that first year. And the impact of Sutton Trust is something that I'm going to just talk through now. So we built Sutton Trust Online in partnership with Bloomberg and Filtered and a couple of other organizations, and they all had their kind of remit. It was an ecosystem model that we chose, and we were using the Filtered algorithm to plug all of the content that we curated into the platform, which was then servicing the young people. We also then wanted to bring our university partners in. So the Trust has worked with over 20 universities in the UK, but also 300 different employers and loads of different businesses who are also interested in working with us. So what we did was we got them to create that content or use existing content, which we then pulled into programs that we delivered online to the students. And it was a blended approach of like self-led learning as well as learning that was instructed by our university partners. So it'd be like, log on at 10 a.m. today for like a social and a meetup, and we'll go through the itinerary and what you'll get to do. And then the students were then able to take part in different parts of that program throughout the day. They typically lasted a week, but students would often be online for way longer than that. We had an incredible activation rate of 97%. 94% of our newsletters would be opened by students. At the start, when we were embarking on this project, I had no idea what the stats would be. You know, we were talking a lot about, you know, should we set some KPIs and some benchmarks? And I remember always thinking, I have no idea, because we have never done anything digital. We have never done anything during a pandemic, and we have no idea what our young people will feel about being online and learning online. So when we got those stats, we were just completely blown away at kind of the engagement and just their appetite for learning. We had over 22,000 episodes of learning completed by young people, and 92% of that content was marked as relevant, which is a real testament to our young people who helped us curate and mine that content, which the Filtered team then kind of stuck into their algorithm, did their magic, and it came up on the platform. We had 14,000 messages sent between our students and our alums in the first 3 months alone. And again, we were quite nervous about the whole messaging setup. For any of you that have done anything with under 18s, there's a lot of red tape around what you're allowed and what you're not allowed to do. But we worked through all of that, and we were just, again, blown away at just the confidence that the young people had to go online, talk to a stranger, even though they're an alum, but someone that they've never met before, and just ask away and really have those conversations to help inform their future decision-making processes. The alums were fantastic. They dedicated over 1,500 hours that summer to support students, and it was one of our biggest volunteering projects we'd ever run at the Trust. And 74% of students who took part in Sutton Trust Online said it helped them make informed choices about their future pathways. So the student journey, I guess. So we learned a lot from that whole project. Again, it was the first thing we'd ever done digital, the first project that I had managed under innovation. So it was huge learning. I'd never done anything technical in my life before. And I really got a really strong insight into like how the mechanics of it all operated. But we've learned a lot since then, and we're really looking to kind of see what else could we do to help these students. We've got them now. We've got them on a digital platform. So what can we do now to kind of help them on that journey? So we decided, we already had an alumni network, but we decided that we wanted to make Sutton Trust Online for the under 18s, but then create a duplicate of that, like the house next door, basically, where we would then house all of our alumni community, where we would give them all of the same things that our under 18s would have. So the great content, the access to practical tools, and provide them with an opportunity to network with each other. So we basically replicated Sutton Trust Online, but then used it for all of our alumni engagement as well. And there's like a door that connects the two houses, so students can kind of go in between each of those houses and really support young people who are a bit further behind in that journey. And then for students who are in Sutton Trust Online to be able to go and connect with our alumni community as well. So Sutton Trust Online was a real foundation for that. So when we were thinking about what we wanted to do next for our young people, we knew that things like careers became really important. So we launched our first ever careers program at the Trust. We engaged with loads of employers to run workshops on kind of upskilling and what kind of skills employers look for, how to develop those, things like resilience, digital literacy, etc. And so we've got loads of employers that we now work with on our alumni work, and they provide work experience, they provide internships, they do mentoring, insight opportunities, but all done through our platform. And then some of those things are now turning into face-to-face, which is brilliant as things are starting to kind of go back to kind of normal, so to speak. We also then launched our Opportunity Bursary in partnership with JP Morgan. So we were really lucky a couple of years ago to get a £4.8 million grant from JP Morgan to what they found was that when they were looking to recruit young people, often the young people from lower income families wouldn't have those opportunities like internships or study abroad, or even have the opportunity to travel a little bit. And those were the things that, you know, enrich a CV and really take someone beyond just the academics. And we know that they give young people the valuable skills that they need to be successful in the world of work. But because of the fact that a lot of our young people come from lower income families, they don't have the cash to be able to spend on doing a study abroad program, despite all the support that's available. So JP Morgan recognized that challenge, and we did a bit of research that also highlighted some of those problems. And we used that research and the money that they gave us to launch an Opportunity Bursary. And that's basically a £5,000 grant that we give to a young person, and they then can use that money to spend on covering the cost of staying in London to do an internship, or using it to do a voluntary project abroad, or doing whatever it is that they wanted. And we had an incredible number of applications, and we then selected a handful of those students to take forward. And we're now looking at how we can use that model. In the future, this September, we'll have our second cohort of students coming through, and hopefully in the future, they'll be able to give back in the same way that our alums are giving back to the young people in our program. So a real life cycle approach to the kind of the way that we're working on that project. But we're so excited, and we've had lots of interest from other employers and from other areas around how we can roll out the bursary to support even more young people, because we know it's such an instrumental part of that learning journey for them. So what's next? So many exciting things. I guess it's thinking a bit more about the young people that we're working with now. So some of our research shows that 59% of the millennials that we work with want the opportunity to learn and grow. And it's really important for them when applying for a job. But then 87% of them are also saying that their professional and career growth and development opportunities are also really important. So it's that kind of combination between like wanting to learn, wanting to grow, wanting to develop, but then also having the right employer who can support that and nurture that. So it's thinking a bit more about how we can support the employers that we work with in the sector more broadly to kind of get ahead with some of those skills development and those education pieces that young people are so keen to do. You know, our young people have such an appetite to learn. Like, you know, who would have thought that 94% of students would be like, yeah, I'm going to log on and go onto this new platform that I've never done before and take part in learning. Like, there's such a strong appetite there to learn and engage and experience. So what can employers do to help with some of that? The first thing that we always try and encourage employers to do is data collection. Like, I'm sure you've gathered that I love data, and we as an organization love data, Kat loves data, everybody loves a bit of data. So the more of that you can collect around your workforce, around the young people that you're potentially recruiting or hiring and that are joining your business, the better you can then adapt what you're offering as L&D teams to help support them. Young people are very savvy, and they will ask the right questions during interviews. We tell them to ask these questions when we're training them on interview skills and kind of how to look for the right employer. But they will want to know, you know, what are you going to offer me to help me develop? But if you know what your workforce is made of, and you can then adapt what you're offering to make sure what you've got is then meeting the needs of the different demographics of young people that you work with. And I'm sure this is all stuff that you all know, so I feel like I'm don't need to go on and on about it. And the second is around talent pipeline. So we know the pandemic, through all of our data and research, that the pandemic has completely halted a lot of those opportunities that young people, that were a lifeline for young people, such as internships or work placements or spring insight opportunities, summer insight opportunities that would traditionally be the pipeline to then getting those jobs. But that's not happening right now, or they are happening, but happening at a much slower rate as people are starting to go back to normal. But what I would implore organizations who are working in this space and wanting to think about the kind of skills that young people need in the future is, the more you engage with young people at a younger age, the more you'll have influence over the skills that they will have when they come to you. Talking to them at the kind of age of 21 is great, but it's not going to change the last 10 years of education that they might have gone through. What we want to do is encourage employers to go a lot younger down the age group, try and talk to schools, try and talk to teachers, try and talk to universities, to think about how we can shape and mold young people so that they're ready for when they come to you and have the right skills that they need to be successful in your organizations. And so, yeah, doing all those types of things will definitely help. And then collaboration. Kat mentioned in my opening remarks that I'm a big fan of partnership working. It's the only way the trust can ever get work done. We're a really small organization of only 35 people, but we managed to work with 10,000 young people every year, 300 employers, 20 plus universities, and we would not be able to do that if we don't work collaboratively. So thinking a bit more about how within your sector and also beyond your sector, you can talk about some of those skills challenges and what you can do together to work with young people and to try and help upskill them. You know, we've got great examples at the Trust of programs that we run that are all about collaboration. You would never think we would be able to get 10 banks to work together or 20 law firms to work together, but you can do that, because there is no organization out there that will say no to wanting to help young people. So it's all about how we work collaboratively to try and change the dialogue, try and think about how we train up young people and support them in that journey, so that when they get to your organizations, they're really successful and they can continue on that journey with you there. So why is this all important? Because if we don't adapt, if we don't adapt as organizations, then, you know, the young people that we want to work with and represent will just go somewhere else. And that's what we don't want. We want them to come and work with people like you, because we know that you're already thinking about L&D and you're on such great paths for like doing really successful things. We want to work collaboratively, and we want to really think about how we develop those essential skills for young people, and how the people in your organizations can share their experiences and give back to the young people that we work with. So that is, in a nutshell, my session. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Binda. I'm going to share my screen one more time. So there'll be a bit of a delay. So it looks like the chat really lit up of, you know, your ability to get buy-in and foster collaboration, especially in regards to university, and just the continuity of experience. And then a lot of wow with your stats of, you know, just engagement with the platform, which is super exciting. So we have about 18 minutes left, and we're going to send you into a workshop. It looks like there was some Q&A populated, but it also looks like there were some answers there. And we're going to workshop it. So you heard from Lisa, Catherine with Natwest. You heard from Binda with Sutton Trust. We're going to send you into your tables to have a talk. If you haven't joined a table and you came in a little bit late, this is how you join a table when we stop the presentation. Just join a table and we're going to have a conversation. of what inspired you to write something down. What were some key insights that you heard between the two presentations? Where do you have maybe more curiosity? If you've got questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And we've got some lovely table moderators for you. So Emma as well from Natwest is also joining a table to help facilitate the discussion. Toby and Naj are also going to jump into some tables. And then I think the keynotes and I are going to bounce around as well. So we're going to give you roughly about 12 minutes to have a talk, and then we will come back and debrief because we'd love to know what you said. So we're going to send you off. You guys, we're at time. I hope we didn't cut you off in some incredible thought or moment of discussion. And we want to be respectful. We condensed, for those of you that have been here before, these are typically 90-minute sessions, and we listen to the feedback and we shrunk it down to 60 minutes. However, I said, but wait, there's more. We can happily stick behind and carry on the conversation. If you would like to. So we've got just a couple of minutes. If anybody wants to raise a hand and come up on stage and debrief, we've got the clock is ticking away. It looks like some great conversations, some great session. Thank you, Gary. If you want to stick around, we're happy to stay behind the keynotes myself, my filtered friends, happy to answer questions. It looks like I've got some people joining me on stage. If you want to say thanks for being here, the floor is yours, keynotes. If you want to come back next session, we are going to take on what we are work in progress calling skills plumbing for our next CLO Coffee Club. But Binda, Catherine, Lisa, any parting words for you from you to the group?
Well, just Kat, I think just a thank you to everyone, because there's been such huge engagement and the questions have been really good. And I kind of flipped it between a couple of the rooms, and the conversations were really good. I think one of the things that in one of the rooms that we were talking about was, just making sure that the translation, so some things that Binda was talking about in terms of the skills taxonomy that they're using, how does that really closely align to what's happening in organizations, that they shouldn't feel disconnected. So that was really, really interesting. And just in the other room, how you kind of start some of these programs small and scale them up, and how you then continue to embed and review that. So yeah, really, really good. And thank you very much for all the questions. And just to say to people, if anyone has got any other questions after this, then more than happy for you to contact either Catherine or I. I'm sure we'd be more than happy to do any follow-up. And thank you for inviting us.
Thanks for saying yes.
Yeah, same here. If anyone's got any questions, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, or Kat, you can share my details. I've dropped in the chat a little video that just shows some of the impact of our program on like the young people, and you can hear them talking about their experiences and things. But yeah, really, really great conversations, and I think lots of food for thought around some of the other bits of research that I now want to go away into, particularly given our skills piece of research was done in 2017, and since then lots have changed. So yeah, thinking a bit more about how we might update that skills framework. So yeah, really great conversation. So thank you, everyone.
Wonderful. Well, with that, I think we are done with the official session here. So for anybody that wants to stay behind, what's percolating for you? What burning questions are on your mind, or if it's off topic of sharing skills across generations, what would you like to know? All right. Well, if nobody has any questions, all right. I'm seeing a lot of send off, a lot of thank yous. All right, it looks like the team put something up on the screen, and it came from Duncan. Toby captured it. What would be interesting to see is how the skills taxonomy with young people maps to Natwest employers. So Duncan, if you're still here, Not for sure if you want to elaborate on your question, or there is a raise hand function. Or maybe your question got answered.
I think maybe one for us to take away. I think what Duncan was saying, I was in the room, and Binda was in the room at the time, was that you know, that these, what's required and what's being developed in the pipeline should not be different, that they should be very aligned. So that's maybe something for Binda and I to maybe take away, or for other organisations to make sure that there is consistency.
Yeah.
Catherine touched on it with us with the work that we did with the Financial Services Skills Commission, in making sure that as a financial services kind of organisation and in totality, that we've got consistency across that sector. So that was a big piece of that work, to make sure that we had consistency, and that influenced our top 10 future skills and our overall skills framework.
Yeah, and we for every program we run, we have a theory of change model, which basically outlines like what are the outcomes that we expect every young person to have when they finish our program or go through our program. And a lot of those will have like the key skills that are sector specific. So for example, when we're doing our law program, there'll be certain skills that we'll consult with all of our legal partners on, that will then influence the type of skills that we want young people to walk away with from our programs. But then for Sutton Trust Online, we've kind of got a broader remit. So and that's the piece that I said we probably want to do maybe another bit of research on, in terms of surveying all of the employers out there that we work with, to try and find out like what common skills are there that sit across all of them that we could then adjust in our framework.
Wonderful. And we have somebody who raised their hand. Did you have a question for the panel?
Yes, I did. First of all, I'm so sorry. I had some technical difficulties, so didn't manage to engage as much as I wanted to. But I definitely wanted to say a massive thank you. And especially Binda, your presentation was so inspiring to me. I think I love what you're doing. So a massive well done. But also just building on that question from Duncan, I'm just wondering, in terms of like future skills, how do we make it? I mean, are the future skills considered by a younger generation and the older generation the same skills? Would be my first sort of question. And how do we ensure that that we meet somewhere in between, you know? And also to Lisa, that cross-skilling, that upskilling between generations in Natwest, I wonder how the response was. Were there any sessions where the younger generation were the trainers and the older generation were learning from them, and how the older generation responded to that? Because sometimes it's maybe considered a little bit, uncomfortable for them to be learning from someone who is much younger and perhaps a way less experienced. And were they keen? Were they enthusiastic? Was that something that they were happy to do, to learn from much younger people with much less experience, or was that a challenge for you guys?
Probably all of the above. So yes, they were. Yes, they did. And some no, they didn't, probably.
Right.
So I guess we've got we were talking about it in one of the rooms, actually. One of the areas of our strategy is what we call building a culture of continuous learning.
Yes.
So one of our kind of key pillars, and one of the things we're looking to do is to change that mindset around what learning actually is. So it's not stopping going on a workshop. It's not stopping reading. It's happening all the time. It's happening in every day. So we're really looking to help and facilitate that, sometimes through technology, through knowledge sharing, to be able to share knowledge, but also through peer-to-peer as well, so that becomes a cultural norm for us, and therefore it doesn't seem as different as it might be. And actually what we do see is younger people running programs for older people, and maybe if any of the Natwest guys are still on who run some of those curricula, it might be handy for them to chip in. But that is a big part of our strategy, and how we build that culture and provide the tools and the foundations for people to be able to cross-skill their colleagues, peer-to-peer learning, and learn continuously, as opposed to have to stop them for that to be something more formal.
I love that question of mentoring up and mentoring down. And then you had your first question, I think, was around the future skills overlap. You know, how do you, from the younger and the older generation, how did you land on that? Did I get that right?
Yeah, would older and younger generation define the required skills as the same skills, you know?
Yeah,
I guess,
I mean,
yeah.
Binda might have a view on that one in the work that she has done, because one of the things she's doing is working with that definition of skills for younger people entering the workplace versus then working with employers. I was explaining that in one of the rooms that we've got a number of programs that we run in schools. So we run a program called Career Sense for people in high school, so between the ages of 13 and 18. And we're looking to establish more employability skills to help them enter the workplace, but also giving them that insight into the skills that are particularly in need in organizations, and potentially, you know, running programs to support that. So we are doing some work in schools to help that translation across the divide. But Binda, I don't know whether you'd have anything from the research and the work that you've already been doing as well.
Yeah, so a lot of our, as I mentioned at the start, like some of our skills framework is all based on that research that we did, that surveyed like employers and then mapped it against like the skills that young people would typically develop in schools, and then to kind of find the gaps basically between those. And that's a bit of work that I think we'll probably need to review, because it's been a few years, and I think COVID has kind of probably slightly changed some of those, I imagine, particularly because students haven't been in school, etc. So, you know, I imagine things like confidence, for example, maybe a little bit lower for young people. Knowledge about the workplace, I know for a fact is going to be very low, because they haven't had as much exposure to those things. So I think it's going to be a question of like how we might redo some of that work, given that we're in a post-COVID, hopefully, era going forward. But I think it's also about, I really like that question around like, how do older generation and younger generation like kind of share those skills, and do they kind of have that two-way learning that happens just from having kids? Like, I learn all the time from them. Like, there is nothing a young person can't share that you know could potentially be really useful for someone older in their career, and vice versa. And that's why like the opportunity to connect is so important. And that's where we saw the impact COVID had, for example, because so many young people lost those opportunities to interact with people who are, you know, 20 or 30 years along that line, down that line from them. And that's why those connections are really, really important. And I think the more we can do face-to-face, you know, the better it is. But obviously digital is still an important way that we do that. But I know for a fact, when we have our volunteers who are, you know, sometimes in their very late stages of their careers, take part in workshops with our 16-year-olds, like they are always giving us feedback on how it was like the highlight of their week, of their month, you know, because it's the opportunity to really influence like the thinking of a young person. And they're so impressionable, their minds are like sponges. Like, it's such a nice opportunity. So more of those that we can create for young people and for people within our organization, be that at school age or at your graduate, you know, talent age or whatever, like the more of those connections and more of those conversations that can happen, the nicer it is. But I do think that there's also a role around like making sure that it's representative. So we do a lot around like understanding your workforce and understanding your graduate market in terms of the data and socioeconomic makeup, because there's nothing worse for a young person to walk into a room full of people that don't represent who they are and can't, you know, emulate some of the challenges that they have faced to get to where they are. So the more of that you can do, the more higher quality those interactions will be. So yeah.
I think, just to finish the point, I think one of the things that we find is that young people are really, you know, much more demanding. I think in terms of, I think you touched on it in your presentation, Binda, in terms of what they want and how they want to learn, and will probably not settle for less. So I think what that does is really great, because then that drives the kind of grassroots, the way in which we as learning teams and as leaders in the organisation need to embrace and respond to that. So I think that that's been really interesting. So I've got a number of people in my team who are, you know, below the age of 25, and they are really demanding about what they want and what they want from their job, and being able to do side gigs. So it's been really exciting, I think, to have people like that in the team, because I think that then drives forward much quicker us as an organisation. So yeah, much more demanding.
I guess from my perspective, especially maybe because it's a law firm, it's a little bit more, you know, the seniority part is being very important. and the mentoring, and it's very well seen to be mentored by your older partner in the firm or someone senior to you, but maybe not necessarily the other way around, which is why I brought it up, because I think in a culture like a law where you've got that very high level structure, it might be difficult for a partner to be like, come to an intern or someone, you know, who just joined the company and be like, I really don't know how to do this, could you help me? Or I'm really interested in this, but I'm not very technical, so, you know, let's share. I think sometimes it might be seen as somehow degrading, which is obviously
And what's going to be really interesting for us is, you know, when Career Hub launches for us at the end of this month, one of the pieces of functionality which Lisa talked about earlier is you know, that mentors are surfaced for people that are based around your skill set. So actually, you know, if your skills interest is in a particular area, your mentor might be a grade below or a grade above or 2 grades below or above or whatever. And that, I think that culturally will also be a different indication for us too, and fascinated to see how that kind of plays out. But I mean, we've certainly got reciprocal mentoring programs that have happened for a while in lots of different areas across the bank. But you know, I guess some people still have that traditional mentality of, you know, your mentor has to be someone older, more senior, or whatever it might be.
You need a few good role models, I think. You
Definitely.
need to find a good few role models to start that process somewhere.
And knowing how DLA operate in London, like, and in the UK, like, they are one of our favorite firms, if I can even say that. But we work with them so closely on our like Pathways to Law program, our careers program. I do a lot of work with them on Prime, which is like a consortium of law firms that work together to try and progress the sector. And you know, you'd be so surprised how willing people are to take this agenda on. Like, it's such a big agenda piece right now, like leveling up, definitely. But I just think like there will be so much buy-in, I'm sure, there, and using your other, you know, using the London office as the example, for example, to show others, you know, that this is how it can operate, because we have senior people from DLA speak at our young people focused events all the time, and they are so well received, and it is just such a lovely exchange. It can work. So happy to kind of, connect you up or put you in touch with people who work in our legal projects. But there's so many great opportunities that work. And we know, because all the evidence and research and evaluation we do shows that it works. So.
Oh, that's great news. Thanks, Binda. that really helps. I've got one more thing that I wanted to bring up, but I don't know if you still have time, because I think maybe I'm the only one left.
Please.
But it's fascinating to me because it's all, you know, it's all new and exciting. I really don't like this disproportion that we've got, or like this division between what's called soft skills and hard skills, and what's considered, you know, more sort of important to learn, I suppose, were always the hard skills and the technical skills. And I would be interested to know as well, and how would you sort of, how do we sell the soft skills as something that's as essential, as equally important as your technical abilities and your, you know, legal knowledge in our case? Because we know that we don't have as much engagement with our soft skills curriculum as we've got with our technical ones. So any experience in this area?
Catherine, I think probably so we our critical people capabilities. So we've got 6 critical people capabilities, which you could class as soft skills, but they're hard soft skills. Let's call them. I don't like the term soft skills either. I think it devalues actually what it is. But and that's been really, really championed through the organisation from the top. It's a really critical component of our kind of holistic learning journey. And just as interesting, one of the things that in our Future Skills campaign programme, one of the things we do is we produce what we call a quarterly kit bag. So it's a quarterly kit bag of learning solutions that we deliver to the organisation under a campaign. And I guess it would have been easiest to go with something like digital or data as the first thing that we launched. But the first thing that we launched was actually called Learning to Learn. So that was the first campaign that we ran from the Future Skills campaign that was championed by our chief exec, which was about helping you to build the skills that you need to learn in a modern organization. So I think it's just how you place the emphasis sometimes on the importance of those things within your holistic kind of learning journey. So there's obviously a soft, there's a behavioral element, there's a skill element, and there's a really kind of more hard technical element. And I guess in our organization, there's also a professional qualifications element to that as well, because we do a lot of certifications and accreditations as well. Yeah. So it's raising the profile and then getting that really championed, and it's not an add-on, it's an intrinsic part of your learning proposition. But Catherine, I don't know, or Binda, whether you would add anything.
Yeah, I think it's so the way that we've tackled this is because, again, if you ask a young person to, you know, do you think, you know, how do you rank on this skill, or what is this skill? Have you developed this before? They probably won't be able to answer that question. It's quite a tough thing to get a 16-year-old to do. So the way that we tackled it was like, when we did our mapping of our skills framework, we actually had like topic areas, and then each piece of topic, we then mapped against like the skills that we think it would then result in if they then went through that topic and learned about it. So we kind of linked that to like practical learning, but then, okay, if you read this and do this bit of work online, then we imagine it will develop like these 3 skills, for example. And that's actually what we use to then map against the filtered framework. Because if you ask a young person like, oh, you know, how do you think you are in terms of your team building skills, they will have no idea how to necessarily rank that, because even if you ask me, I'd be like, I guess I'm 8 out of 10. I don't know, like, you know, it's such an arbitrary thing to be able to ask a young person, but you need to kind of have some information or a baseline to be able to then work up on that. So what we did was then we effectively locked our skills framework onto all the skills onto our content pieces. So then when, as a student is going through our content, we can then see the skills that they're then developing. And then at the end, we can then do some analysis around like, okay, watching these things then develop like these skills, for example, and then show that to the young person when they log into their profile around all the different skills, like a little bit of a web. So there's lots of interesting ways that you could kind of tackle that, but that's kind of the main way we've done it on our platform. But when we do face-to-face, it is harder. So we normally will ask a baseline survey where, again, it won't explicitly ask about the skills, but it will ask questions that will lend itself to certain skill types. So we ask them, before you join our program, how do you feel about these things? And we ask them the questions, and they're all kind of tagged against skills. And then we ask them during our program how you're feeling about this since you've gone halfway through. And then we ask them right at the end, and we look at the skills change over that period that they're engaging with us. And that shows really interesting things where like confidence around certain things, like knowledge around like applying to university, will be super high at the beginning because they all think that they know everything. And then they go through our program and realize, actually, I don't know the right things, and I've actually learned all the wrong things about how to make a really good application to university. And then at the end, their confidence goes up because we're educating them about how to do it right. And so you'll see these movements around the skills as they go through the program. So it's been really interesting for us, and something that, like, as part of like my work at the Trust, like, we're going to do a lot more of, because it's really useful to be able to track the skills development a young person goes through over the course of a program or intervention. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of how we're tackling it.
Yeah, no, that's amazing actually, because I think that's something that we can utilize in companies as well, in corporate world. You know, let's see how your skills develop. Let's give them a scale that they can actually track their development. Like you said, it's not just for young people. I think it's amazing. So I'm definitely stealing that idea and trying to work think around it, how we can utilize a similar thing. It's amazing. Yeah.
And maybe just as just giving it a focus as part of your performance cycle. So that's one of the things that we do.
Oh yeah.
So as part of our quarterly check-ins, which are our performance check-ins, it is about the work you've done, your kind of technical expertise, but it's also about how you have contributed and enabled and supported others, and also how you have demonstrated against our critical people capabilities, which are our behavioural framework that's got a really clear definition. So there's something about giving it a focus as part of performance conversations as well.
Yes, and that's definitely one of my goals, to get it linked with the performance conversations. But for us, it's always been a struggle, because it's about the connection with the talent team, and it's, we are still trying to build that connection. So it's definitely something that we know it's an unexplored possibility for us.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw that Jivian posted an article from Josh Burson, and instead of calling them soft skills, he likes to call them power skills. And I think just through the lens of, those that aspire to be in a leadership role or work that really requires a lot of collaboration, it's all about those power skills, those communication skills. You mentioned, self-awareness is a big key. So kind of framing it that way of, as an individual contributor, you can have strong technical capability here, but if you want to go further, you're going to have to round out your skill set with some of these things.
Yeah. And again, with the young people, probably the power skills would be, they are more self-aware, and they are more maybe computer literate, and then the older generation can have a different set of skills, soft skills, more evolved. So sorry, I keep disappearing. It's the connection. It's not just me giving up on you. Like, I'm done.
Well, you keep coming back. I don't think you've given up. So thank you.
I keep coming back.
Appreciate your time. So we are actually out of time. So hopefully, if you guys can post your LinkedIn, I've already gotten a few requests on my LinkedIn. Would love for you guys to connect and continue the conversation offline. For those of you that have registered with CLO Coffee Club, you will get the slide deck from our lovely presenters and keynotes, as well as we'll create a post, a highlights post as well. So you will have all of the things after this. And we hope to see you next time.
Thank you, Kat. See you soon.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Have a lovely day.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for your time.